Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and today I have one of the most influential riders in the world of cycling right now, Mr. Cayne. How are you today, sir?
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
It's going as best we can right now, but it's going, right?
Right,
And
right,
that's
exactly.
all I can ask for.
That could
That's
be a
all I can
t-shirt.
ask for.
It's going could be a t-shirt at this point.
You know what?
For real.
And I've been making some T-shirts, so maybe that'll be one of the next ones that I put out. Who knows? Well, listen, man, you have a rich history in the cycling world. You've got these amazing websites, and unlike in the past, I feel like skateboarding has always had a really good lifestyle component to it, whereas BMX specifically wasn't necessarily lifestyle. And I always tried to figure out, how do you get that skateboard feel into BMX?
Right.
But I think you're doing a really nice job of it, because you're combining BMX and other sized BMX bikes, right? Bigger bikes, with trails and racing. And you've got a fashion influence in there, but then you also have the hip hop culture as well. And these three separate websites, but yet they're all together because the brand is the same. When you look at all three of them across the board, your brand is fantastic. So kudos, bravo, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
How did you get there? Like, what was the influence where you're like, you know what, this is what's needed, I'm going to do it?
It all kind of stems back to my childhood. Back in the day when we were all coming up, this is the 80s, right? Everything is still kind of developing. So, when you were like, 84, 83, 82, as a little kid, everything is starting to develop. You have hip hop, which is growing, which is basically, as my soundtrack as a youth was, is hip hop. You have the whole comic book culture that's going on. That's always been like a staple, but that was the thing going on back then. You also had BMX that was coming up at the same time. So these, BMX and hip hop were like two major things that were coming up at the same time.
Right.
And as a kid, it's funny because you had that part where you got into cars. You decided, like, I want to be a rapper. I want to be a producer. Oh, I'm going to race for a living. I'm going to race BMX for a living. Back in the 80s, I'm going to be a pro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as a kid growing up, that's how my childhood was. It was like, it was bikes. It was hip hop. And that's what it was. So, throughout my journey in life, I like to do comedy as well. That was another thing that I wanted to do back in the day. Oh, I'm going to be a comedian. I used to watch Saturday Night Live. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do stand-up, but I want to do it different and do songs and things like that. So
right.
I had all that going on, right? So got into acting during that time, started doing films and things like that, and then decided to during that time, I was also doing music. I was also producing hip hop. I had my own production company. This is actually where the Sugar Cayne came from. It was Sugar Cayne Entertainment at first.
Really?
And that was a production company that I used to produce beats. I had artists, all kind of stuff. And we were just trying to do our independent thing, And all through that time, I was producing, riding bikes, and acting. That's what I was doing.
Wow.
Like that whole time. So I would go to Mulally's, just to backtrack a little bit, we had New Bridge Road BMX in Merrick. That's where I came up. That's where I learned BMX and everything at. And when that shut down in 87, I stayed on a bike, you know what I mean? Because like back then, BMX was developing because you had racing, you had freestyle, you had flatland,
right?
And then you started having street coming in and stuff like that. But back then, I would consider myself more of a racer, but I just love to do everything though at the same time. So I would love to jump and try and learn 360s and all kind of stuff, hit the trails,
Right.
So that was life. That was part of life. I would get up in the morning, make a bunch of beats, go ride my bike. That's what it was, And then when I got older, it would be make a beat, ride the bike, and then I have to go to a gig and do some acting, do extra work in the movie or some nonsense, right? So on the production side, this is all going to kind of tie in. On the production side, used to produce music, hooked up with a bunch of artists. We go to studios, and then you go in the studio and you know, it would take a long time to get things done. And you're like, why is it taking so long to get stuff done? And it costs a lot of money. And it's like, you know, it'd be better if I just learn how to do it myself.
Sure.
So off of my experience as doing production and engineer work, it led me to figuring out how to do things on my own, because I never had the budget to pay people to do stuff.
Right.
So I always learned how to, you know, figure out how to do it myself. So I use that same mentality approaching a lot of things. So when it came to acting, when the work started drying up, it was like, all right, well, let me create something for myself then. Let me not sit around and wait to get called for a job. Let me create my own thing.
Right.
And then when it came to when I was doing my comedy and with the parodies and stuff, it was the same mentality. It was like, all right, well, let me use my background in music to produce parodies. I don't need to call nobody to make the track for me. I can recreate tracks myself. So I would, you know, and then I would engineer it myself, produce it myself. I write it with me and my cousin would sit down and write the songs. And so it was that same kind of DIY mentality going into that. So
you were an entrepreneur at a very young age.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I've heard people say entrepreneur is
a broke what do you call it? A broke mature.
right. I mean, I know that one all too well. Exactly. But I've heard people say that it's a mindset, right? It's not just you fall into it, but you actually are operating from that space from a long time ago. Myself did the same thing. Like, yeah, I'm going to figure this out myself and just go do it. Instead of waiting around for somebody, I came up with this project. I'm like, this is what I'm doing because I love this. And it's so much fun to hear these stories from where you came from. And you said you grew up in New York. You've been there the whole time?
Yeah, Long Island, Roosevelt, New York.
Lots of studs came out of the New York area in the BMX world.
Oh, yeah.
Lots.
Yes. I used to race against a couple of them.
Back
in the day. I was like just a local dude. This is the thing about BMX is like, you know, people are like, well, who's this guy and where did he come from? And, you know, he just started interviewing people out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, I'm a super local, just local dude. You know, when I was really young, you know, it was like I didn't have money to go anywhere, and my parents weren't driving me to all these different races. So it was like I ride my bike from my house to Newbridge and we race. And that was it, you know. And then if we weren't racing, my father would, you know, take us upstate and go camping and stuff like that. And, you know, as a young BMX, you're like, I like camping, but man, it's a Sunday. I want to race. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Is there going to be a gate there? Can we get on the gate and ride?
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. And then you're like, it's a 4-hour drive. And, you know, what's really crazy is like when you're really, really like racing a lot, that 4-hour drive, you feel the effects of it on your legs. So it was like, I don't want to go this weekend. My legs are going to be stiff when I get back. You know what I mean? So it was
absolutely.
It was crazy. But so I would just, you know, I would race at Newbridge. Used to hit up Shoreham a little bit, not as much as I'd like to, but that was like 1,000 miles away from me back then when I was younger. You know what I mean?
Really?
I just didn't have, you know, didn't have the access to it, and just didn't really have the access to it. So I didn't really go out there that much, you know. Went to Braddock maybe one time in Jersey. I think it was a national they had at the time. And then it was actually 10 years after Newbridge shut down, like 96, when I actually came back for a hot second and hit up a couple of races. I had a car at the time, you know, and I was like, man, I want to get back into racing. But all this time I stayed riding. I never stopped riding trails and skate parks and things like that. It's just racing wise. I was just absent from racing because it was like during that time I'm, you know, trying to work on movies and things like that. And all this time I'm trying to figure out a way to bring it all back to bikes. It always was a thing. Like, I got to bring it back to bikes sooner or later. So I'm going to stay on my bike, and just in case something happens, I'll be ready to do it. You know what I mean? That was always in the back of my head to bring it back to bikes.
Right.
But bring it back to BMX in particular. So so I would, you know, just hit up a couple of races. And like I said, 96, it would be me, Remo, Marv, you know, my dudes from Harlem. We would go to a bunch of races and hit up a couple of nationals. So that was like the first year I really came back and made a little bit of noise. And then I started doing my own cable access show. Well, let me back up again. I'm all over the place. I'm sorry I'm all over the place, but it's
no,
it's
I
really
love this,
crazy
man, because this is the way it goes, man. You're like, I forgot how I got here. We had to do this first. So yeah, man, keep going. I love this.
Yeah, so when I was doing my my parodies and stuff like that, you know, like I said, we were really doing it outside. We were really DIY with it. You know what I mean? So during that time, I learned how to edit video, and it was so similar to music. It was like kind of like easy to do because I was already editing music on the computer. So
Wow.
when you
Okay.
get to video, you just adding video to the same thing. You're just dealing with timelines and splicing and stuff like that. So it wasn't
Sure.
it wasn't really a big transition. So we would start shooting our own comedy videos, and I used to do my own parody videos, and we used to do skits and, you know, voiceovers, all kind of crazy stuff, right? So one of the guys who worked on one of my albums actually, Star from Star and Buck Wild. He's a real popular radio host. And he was one of the guys who I had on my record when I actually had a record deal, which is a whole nother story. And he
He's awesome. So
and he one of the very few guys who actually came back. Like he blew up and came back and was like, yo, Al, we need to get some songs, some parodies for the radio show, da 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 da, right?
Wow. Okay.
So he was the one that told me, he's like, yo, why don't you start doing cable access shows? Like, go to cable access and start doing cable access shows. All right, yeah, you know, because at the time, cable access was YouTube. This is
I was gonna say
YouTube came in. Cable access was YouTube. All right.
Yes.
So,
yep.
so you know, and I'm in a good market. You know, we have, you have different. You have to submit it to all the different areas. So you have to submit it to Brooklyn. You got to submit to Manhattan. Submit to Queens. You got to submit to Long Island because cable access is broken up into it's broken up just like cable basically.
Really?
So like say your cable service is RCN, you got to submit it to a cable access station for RCN. Then you have Cablevision and you got Comcast. So you got to submit it to all these different things depending on where they cover your area. So that's how that works. So but if you're not from the neighborhood, you have to get a sponsor. So somebody from the neighborhood has to actually sponsor your show for you to submit it. So it's like a whole thing. You can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to broadcast everywhere. You got to, it's steps to it. Anyways, long story short, I would edit my own little 20-minute show. And when I started doing it, I said, you know what? I have to incorporate BMX, hip hop, and comic book culture in this show. Because at first, you know, when I was working, when me and my cousin were working, we really focused on just doing comedy and skits. So my whole thing was like, you know, we would do man on the street interviews. I would do wild skits and parodies. And that was like the basis of the show. And I actually almost had that show picked up at one point, which was
cool.
Cool.
Really?
Yeah, so I sat down with MTV and VH1, almost got BET to pick up the show. And after that experience, I was like, man, I still want to do this, even though it's not going to get picked up or whatever. I want to do it, but I really want to, but this is my real vision. My real vision is to do all that comedy stuff, but then put it in with BMX, comic book culture, and things like that.
Right.
So I started going to you know, comic book conventions and things like that, and filming there. And I'm like, yeah, man, you know, I just want to promote all of this crap. You know, I want to promote it all. You know,
right?
Because when you go to like a comic book convention, you go to a car show. You go to a BMX race, you have you go to a boat show. I used to cover boat shows with all kind of stuff, right? So and I used to put it all I used to put it all in this show, this little 20-minute show, condense it all in there. But when you go to this, you find that the entrepreneurial or the small business independent mindset, the way that community, because they're all pretty much the same kind of community. It's just such an awesome community of people. You know, it's inspiring to see, like, you know, you go to a comic book convention, you got dad, he's an artist. Mom, she does jewelry, and they have the baby in a little thing back there, and they're doing their own little thing, and it's like, that's dope. You know what I mean?
Right.
You got the dude who's a BMXer, came back at like 45 years old because his kid is into it. You know, and then it's like, well, I started making my own parts. Like, well, really? Making your own parts? Wow. You know what I mean? Because coming up when we were coming up, it was like, you never really knew the people behind these products. You never knew that was a possibility back then. Now it's like, that's what it is. You know what I mean? I mean, you were like the exception to the rule, actually. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, word? but now you have all these people who are creating their own destiny, creating their own, taking their hobbies, basically taking your hobby and making it into, your business. So
Right.
your hobby's boating, your hobby is BMX, your hobby is comic books, illustration. Maybe your hobby is music, MCing. It's, fashion, because if you go to like one of these fashion shows, or like, I used to go to Agenda when it was in New York, you have the big companies, but you also have these independent companies, these small companies that are doing it, and they're coming up, and the energy and mentality is all the same. And it's such a dope community of people that are entrepreneurs. It's like a really dope group of people. You know what I mean? So it was always a thing of mine to always try and promote like people who are on their come up, whether it was in music,
Right.
comics, bikes, or whatever. So, that was pretty much it. So I just put it all in one show. We'd have the man on the street thing. Then we would have a parody show. Then I would show hip hop music videos, And when I talk hip hop, I mean like, real authentic hip hop, like, boom bap, not
Right.
stuff that's disparaging, crazy stuff. You know what I mean?
Understandable. Yes.
Yeah, and then you would have a bike race right in the middle of that. I would have I would have like 30. I would have like what would be like 35 all the way up to like 60-year-old cruiser class from a national just pop up right in the middle of all of
Right.
that. Just straight up bike racing. It wouldn't even be interviews. It would just be it would be bike races. Then we have like the 9-year-old race. You see some crazy video of me doing some stuff, or you watch a hip hop video, then this is bike racing. Like, how does this all make sense? It's like,
right.
That's exactly how this is my life. This is what I'm surrounded with. So I just took all my passions and put it into one thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And some people understand it. People understand it more now, but when I first started doing it, a lot of people didn't get it. Like hip hop and BMX, like what does that mean? And
right.
But there are tons of people who grew up just like me.
Yep. Did you find when you were producing some of the artists that you were working with, were they also into BMX and bikes and skateboards and comics?
I'm trying to think if anybody was really, really into that. Not really, no.
Okay, so you were setting the trend.
No. I mean, they may have been, but it was never like not really a conversation like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Interesting. You were saying a second ago about how a lot of like-minded individuals and are now using their hobbies and using them to support themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the difference is between how it was back in the day and how people do it now? You think it's just the drive, the need, the necessity, the confidence to do it on their own? Because what you're doing, obviously, is you're doing this on your own. You've supported those people
mm-hmm.
with your reviews. Because if you look at your websites, you got so much content on your websites. I'm like, I don't even know how he fills it all up. Like, so much interesting, fascinating stuff. Right. But have you seen in working with those people or chatting with those people, a sort of tie that binds, or something that, they're going to make it and they might not make it?
Well, I don't really think of it as you're going to make it, you're not going to make it. I mean, it's just, good stuff, bad stuff maybe. But right. As far as the entrepreneurs, I think I would have to give props to the provide what do you call them? The people who create the platforms are the people who you have to really appreciate and thank for these entrepreneurs, because I never would have known about half these people if there wasn't a platform like a Comic-Con or East Coast
right.
Black Age Comics Convention, or a national or regional race, or a boat show, or the auto show, things like that. Those platforms, those trade shows, are kind of like was like the glue. It's a shame that we don't have those events now, but we do have Zoom, and people are getting creative now. But before, this whole Corona thing, it was the trade show, it was the conventions that kind of tied it all together, where all these people meet. It's like a big get together. You know what I mean? As far as
yes.
like behind the scenes, even for the consumer, it's the same thing, because a lot of the same consumers come to these things, and you all meet up and like you create these great friendships. And mm-hmm. I think it's what it is that people held on to their childhood dreams and made them a reality. Because we have our childhood dream. I want to be an artist. I want to be a bike rider. I want to be an MC. I want to be a producer, right? And then life hits and you have to get a regular job and blah, 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 blah. But over the last 20 years, we know that that's not a guarantee, right?
Right.
You can work for a job, be loyal as hell, and then you still get fired and they don't care about you and whatever the case is, and cutting the numbers and stuff like that. And, you know, when everything started merging in 2000, right? When business started turning into monopolies, even though that's not supposed to happen,
right.
People were losing jobs left and right, and they were finding out how expendable they really were, right? So then you have like the following years, like between 2001 up until 2008, you know, that was a period of people like, you know what, I'm gonna take this chance and, you know, maybe do my 9 to 5, but I'm going to work on doing my own thing because that's what I want to do. And as things develop, you know, it became a thing where you can actually make a living doing what you do. Some people are successful at it. Some people are having a hard time still, you know, but in this day and age, you're able to do it. You know what I mean? Because I remember New York Comic Con, and this is 2008 when I first really started following and, you know, recording. You know, okay, I gotta stay focused. But yeah, so in 2008, you know, if you went to the Jacob Javits Center, the New York Comic Con didn't take up the whole Javits Center. It only took up a little piece of it, and like in the far corner, it was like so dark for some reason. I don't know, like they had the lights off or something in the far corner, but it wasn't as massive as it is now. You know, San Diego was huge, but 2008, it was not like a huge thing at the Javits Center. You know, it was big, but it wasn't huge.
Right.
And then around that time, you had a lot of smaller conventions. Not a lot, but you had a few smaller conventions that were just starting out, or maybe they were 3 or 4 years in, and they were just starting to come into their own, you know. And now, you know, it's like, it's so pop culture that, you know, it's like a dime a dozen. You can go to an event like every day of the week. You can go to an event now. Well, before pre-corona, pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, so I would say it was, I think what happened with people losing their jobs and really realizing that your job's not guaranteed, that you need to take more control of your money, your destiny, and things like that. And I think people were like, you know what, let me go back to what I really want to do. And that's, you know, I want to be an artist. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you can see it now, like with YouTube, that's the next wave now, you know, with YouTube, like, look what you're doing, the stuff that I'm doing. And, you know, that's just the next stage of entrepreneurialism. I don't really know if is that a word? Entrepreneurialism?
It is now.
It is now.
It is now. Yeah. You know, a good friend of mine said, work your plan B until plan A doesn't matter anymore.
That's basically what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So we're all doing the same thing. So that love is there between all of us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I understand where you're coming from, what you're doing. You understand where I'm coming from. I understand what that guy's doing that's doing his artwork. I understand, you know, like these independent bike companies. You know, you have like Truth BMX and you have Tua, and, you know, I love letting people know about all of the bikes that are offered in the game right now. I think that's awesome. Like, the more bikes, the merrier. I don't care how small the margins are. As a consumer, you know, I'm a consumer, even though I make my own frames or whatever. I'm all for it, man. Bring me all types of BMX bikes. I get it. You know what I mean? And it's awesome. You get more people on bikes, and you might get a kid on a 29-inch. He might go to 20-inch, but he might be a 29-inch dude. Yeah, that's awesome. It's the same bike. It's just bigger.
As long as you're on a bike, right?
Yeah, that's all it is. It's a big BMX bike. It's a little harder to do them X-ups. That's all.
Right. Believe it. You know? Exactly. That's a big wheel to get around. It's going to be pretty hot. So what was it? What was the initial thought of yours that made you decide, hey, you know, I want to start covering all these other brands that aren't getting the love or the respect or the attention that they deserve?
Oh, that all came from me covering independent companies to begin with my show. You know, that's always been the goal. I've always given love to everybody. It's never been a thing where it's like, oh, I need to talk to only the major people. Oh, I need to talk to who's hot. Oh, I'm only going to talk to this person. Oh, you got to pay me to talk to me.
Right.
I burped. But yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's never been that. It's always been, I've always welcomed everybody to the thing, you know, because I don't know, this is how I am, man. I mean, even when it came to music and stuff, like, you know, should have been focusing more on doing parodies, but I was producing other artists at the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whenever I post my own stuff, I always get a bump in, you know, because you got to kind of have a face to what you do. You know what I mean? But a lot of times, like there was a period where I was just always behind the camera, and like you really didn't see me that much. Like you would hear me.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'll be interviewing people, but it's usually I'm just focusing on whoever I'm interviewing, or I'm focusing on a race, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, as a business, you got to kind of attach a face to it. So if I bring my stock up, I can bring everybody with me. So when I interview somebody who nobody cares about, they're going to care because it's me interviewing them, and they might want to, they might actually watch the interview, and they might go back to that person's site. So that's why it's important for me to be like, oh yeah, Crazy Al Cayne. Take pictures of myself. Oh, let's do a look away. You know, because it kind of helps. You know, it helps me, but it also helps that person get some exposure. You know, one of the coolest things about doing my my web show and my TV show and all that stuff, one of the best things is like I'll go to a bike race and hear people say, you know what, I don't listen to hip hop, but I watch your show Spitting in the Whip. Or I'll go to a hip hop show and you go, yo, Al, you still on them bikes? Yo, that bike you posted on the website was crazy. I used to ride a bike. I found out so many people who do I know a bunch of illustrators and comic book creators that are like, yeah, man, I had a BMX bike. I had a Harrow. I had an 88 Harrow. I used to do tricks. I was you know what I mean? So I have conversations like that.
It's
you know
always Harrow too. It's not Harrow. It's Harrow. Every
yeah.
time. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, and I think what ties everything together now, because everybody mostly associates me with bikes, even though I did all these other things. But even people who I worked with back in the day, they always knew that I was a bike dude. I was a BMX dude.
Right.
From way back anyway. But the cool thing now is that everybody is kind of having these kind of discussions with me from all different walks. And I think it all kind of ties back into BMX, because as a kid, we all had bikes. We all either had or wanted a bike, and the bike you're going to start on is going to be a 20-inch.
Totally.
At least when we were kids.
Right.
20-inch.
We had. Yeah.
We just had 20-inch bikes. So we had BMX bikes. So everybody's like, yeah, man, what you talking about? I had a BMX bike. I called a friend of mine the other day because I'm doing this series called the BMX Hip Hop Chronicles. And I called a friend, MC, the other day. And I was like, yeah, you know, you used to ride bikes, right? He's like, come on, man. You know, I rode bikes back in the day. Come on, man. You know, I was like, I just wanted to make sure. I was like, yeah, man, I had a BMX bike. I was like, yeah, so I want to interview you about BMX and how it affected you and you know, it's hip hop, how it affected you and hip hop, and you know how that all worked out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you know, there was a couple of MCs that I had on Spitting in the Whip, which is like it's a hip hop series I do in the car with cats rap in the back seat and throw a beat on and stuff like that.
I keep getting checks from B artists that sample me, and there's a lot real talk, I swear. I get the paper, so I don't care. My contribution's crystal clear. I get calls like Milk, did you hear that shit?
I did an interview with Mike Geronimo, who's an MC, had a song out back in the day. It was blew up. It was a big song. He hit me up one day. He was like, yo, man, yeah, man, I had a Harrow, He's like talking about BMX. Like he just opened wide up for me about BMX. So I got to hit him back and try and get an interview with him about that. So there was a lot of people, man, that from all walks of life that actually are connected via BMX.
It's amazing the people that I've run into that used to race that are, you know, executives, or they are some pretty connected people, right? And they used to race BMX bikes and they loved their GT or their red line. And I still got my red line at home. And so many people that have touched the BMX world, and it's that tie that binds, right? Because then it's easy for us to have that conversation or another conversation because we've got a little bit of a history of where we both have came from.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how that knocks down barriers and knocks down walls, and there builds a trust. Like, ooh, we used to do the same thing, man. I like you because we used to like the same thing, at least.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating to me. It's really fascinating that that's how we work, you know?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique thing for BMX, because you got to remember, As BMXers, we were all outcasts, and back in the day, right? As far as sports are concerned, we were all
Totally.
outcasts.
Uh-huh.
And the thing about being a BMXer is that it's, at the end of the day, it's an individual sport. So you have to be self-motivated, right? It's an individual sport. You're gonna crash, and what you do after your crash creates that character, right? So when you crash, you're gonna give up. You're gonna go home. You're gonna go and do something else, or you're gonna just try and figure it out.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You got to figure it out.
You got to figure
I think
it
that,
out.
and it's a great life lesson too, because it's definitely taught me a lot of work ethic.
Right.
Realizing if I put the work in, I'm going to be successful. Right.
Yeah.
And that's across the board.
Across the board. Take that with you everywhere.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I always tell people the most nervous I've ever been was on the gate for a AA semi at the ABA Grands. Nothing has ever compared to that level of stress as that. Nothing. Except for when my wife had our son. That was a whole nother level.
That'll do it.
But before that, it was that, right? So I was getting ready to do a show one time for Speed TV. And they're like, hey, we're going for 4 hours live. Are you nervous? And I'm like, no, why would I be nervous? They're like, it's 4 hours and we're live. And I'm like, so we just go do it, right? Like, it's the level of stress that the BMX bike has put on me has cooled me out for everything else.
Yeah, man.
Immensely.
Definitely. I see it in my kid, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I remember one time we were, when she first started, her first day on a track, we were at HCBMX, and you know, I was just kind of nervous because it was like, you know, it's like a downhill track and it's not really beginner friendly. At the time, it wasn't really beginner friendly, so I would run behind her around the whole track.
Yeah.
I mean, I was literally running, and I grabbed the back of her seat when she got to a hill because I knew if she fell, you know, if I let her go, she would just wind up destroying herself. So I would be like, catch her or push her up the hill or whatever. And you know, what's really cool about that, I got to mention, is that, you know, when you do something like that and they don't just totally destroy themselves the first day, it keeps them coming back. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Until they get really used to it. Because a lot of people, you know, once a kid falls, they're like, I don't want to do it again. You know what I mean? But when you kind of like usher them into it, you know, even if you have to run behind them, whatever, just kind of usher them around and, you know, kind of give them that little handicap. It kind of helps them like, oh, wow, I did it. Let me try it again. Oh, wow. And then next thing you just let them go. You know what I mean?
Boosting that confidence.
Yeah, definitely. So there was one time where she went and she actually fell over, right? So she started crying and stuff. But then she got up and just rode away while she was crying, which was pretty cool. It's like, that's like a life lesson right there. Like, okay, you hurt, you know, but you're going to get up and cry and ride away and still ride the whole track. And by the time you get to the end of the track, you're back to normal.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Yeah,
that's a fantastic life lesson, because that's pretty much how it is every day anyway, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So what's next for Al Cayne? What is your next project that you're working on as we begin to wrap this up?
Well, it's really just kind of going harder with everything, you know.
Okay.
I've had a YouTube site for I don't know how long, and I kind of neglected it for a while. You know, I would post videos up there and stuff like that, but it's really sugarcane.com is really what I focus on primarily.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, you have a Facebook audience that just lives in Facebook. You have your website people. You have your YouTube audience that just lives on YouTube, Instagram, they just live in Instagram. So unfortunately, you got to provide content for all of these places.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I always try and lead people back to sugarcane.com, which that's like the center of everything for me, because, you know, you really get to, you see the videos, you got photos, you got different product reviews and product posts and things like that. So, but I'm really going to start focusing on really building the YouTube channel up.
Okay.
Like I said, I have this series called the BMX Hip Hop Chronicles. I'm doing like daily Bike of the Day updates now. I got like three different segments for Bike of the Day. It's crazy.
Nice.
I'm doing like an update of the website now. I'm doing like a sugarcane.com update. Excuse me, where I'm giving an update on what's featured on the website for people on YouTube. you know.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so people on YouTube are like, oh, okay, and they go back and check it out. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
everything's kind of trying to lead it back to sugarcane.com, you know.
Is that the umbrella of all the sites? Because like I said, you've got two other sites that are really nice as well with loads of content.
Well, I have sugarcanebikefest.com, which is the bike fest that I do. I'm probably not going to do one this year, which would be like the first time in like 8 years that I'm not doing this event.
Well,
because, you know,
it's kind of
COVID,
weird time,
man.
right?
Gotta stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I probably won't be doing that, but I think I'm gonna try and do something like online that's kind of like bike festish.
That'd be kind of
figure it out. Yeah.
Right.
I have spittinginthewhip.com, which is the hip hop series that I do. Unfortunately, this is not a good time to be spitting in anybody's whip. Can't be spitting bars in the whip right now.
Right.
Even with a mask on.
You need a taxi with the plexiglass in the back. You need like a studio in the back.
I need a 6-foot wide car.
Yes.
With plexiglass on each side. The driver's in separate space. Passengers are all separate. Then I could do it again. It would be good money. We'll be spitting in the whip again.
Yes.
Well. Oh, we're about to say it.
No, I was like, well, in time you'll be back at it, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll be back at it. I'm gonna figure something. I was gonna try and do something like via Zoom, but to get everything in sync is like a nightmare. Like I really tried to figure that one out, and that was just making me want to kill myself because it was like, man, I got to put the beat on, and you got to rhyme to it, but it has to be in sync. And there are some services like that, but I had to chill from that for a while because it was driving me nuts. But when I figure that out, I'll be doing it on Zoom where I'm, you know, with the same type of scenario. So
nice. Well, I'm sure everyone is looking forward to it. I know I am most definitely. Al, thank you for your time today. It has been fantastic to catch up with you. I'd love to hear your story about your love of BMX, comics, music, fashion, the whole thing, man. It's a wonderful lifestyle piece that you've put together and opened up some doors for a lot of people. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And thank you for, like I said before, man, thank you for having me on the show. It's an honor to be interviewed by the great Craig Reynolds.
What? Please, it is my
Rap
honor.
42, the Rap 42, son.
That was a good bike, dude.
Who wants a long bike? Yo, back then, right? Nobody was doing long bikes back then. Nobody, right?
Nope.
The longest bike you could get when you were doing it, the longest top tube was 21 was the longest?
Yes, and then McManus
and then
was
eventually 22? You did 22, right?
22, yep. That was Barry's bike, yes.
And on top of that, how many people like really were like a self-owned BMX company back then? Not Mongoose is making it for us, or this one's making it for me, or it's a signature bike. Like you actually was like, yo, I'm getting my bikes made. This is my company, and I'm putting them out.
That's it.
Talk about real influencer.
I mean, I needed to do it, man, because I was tired of having to go ride for companies and then get custom-made bikes.
Right.
And then I was like, why not just do my own bike? And after I quit riding for Bad & Company, I told my dad, I said, dude, let me do my own thing. He's like, well, how much do you need? I think it was $5,000 to get a batch of bikes done.
Right.
And then it was off to the races, pun intended. That was it. It was fun, man.
That's it right there, man. That's it right there. You know, so we're gonna do an interview too. You know, I gotta reverse this now.
Whenever you are ready, let me know. I'm all for it.
All right, bet.
Excellent. Well, yeah, you guys, if you like what you're seeing, make sure that you go and subscribe to the channel, and also go to Apple Podcasts, subscribe there, and make sure you go to sugarcane.com and subscribe to everything that he's got going on, because it is outstanding. So thanks for tuning in today. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and Al, I will talk with you soon, buddy.
All right, bro. Thanks.